Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks. We are your hosts, Emma.
I'm Allie.
And we are so excited to be back. And I'm so sorry again for those of you that listened to our previous episode. I did have a little bit of a family emergency, so we weren't able to release this episode on the day that we wanted. But I want to let everybody know that if you are not following us on our social media platforms, you can follow us at Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks on TikTok and Instagram. And if you want some access to our show notes and fun behind the scene content, our spooky book club, we do have a Patreon as well. Allie, you want to tell us what we are reviewing today?
Today we're reviewing the 2019 film Midsommar. So we...
I'm so excited.
Oh, okay. That was a visceral reaction.
It really was. I'm Swedish, okay?
Oh, yeah. She's a little Swedish fish over here. But we thought the actual traditional Midsommar was before all of this, but...
We thought it was like the summer solstice, which was this past Thursday, the 20th.
Yeah. But today is Midsommar, the 24th of June. This will be coming out later than that, but happy Midsommar.
Happy Midsommar. How crazy is it that that lined up?
I also hope you celebrate accordingly, but not like this movie does.
Yeah, like do like the fun stuff, not the freaky shit.
Yeah, and a little bit of a spoiler alert. We do spoil everything. So if you haven't seen this, go watch it on Max. But if you don't give a fuck, then come along for this ride with us. And speaking of pagan cults, Emma, what have you been up to?
Well, it has been a doozy of the last couple weeks, but why don't I talk about some things that I am looking forward to? So in the month of July, which we are vastly approaching, vastly? Is that the word? Vastly?
Yeah.
Approaching? I don't know why that sounds
Quickly?
weird to me. Quickly? Swiftly? Anyways, I have a few things though that I'm looking forward to. I am going on a bachelorette trip, and Allie and I Allie, I know you are also equally as excited about this. Maxine comes out on July 5th.
Yes.
Which is coming up so soon.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. And then we're celebrating our 1 year of doing this podcast. So fucking shout out to that. And thank you all for coming along with us on this ride. And we're going to keep on keeping on.
We're like so excited about all of those amazing things, and we have even more amazing things coming up. I'm going to backtrack. I got a tattoo. I was in Arizona with one of my best friends. Shout out to Cassidy. We ate a lot of good food, and I got a tattoo, and it says Live Moss. So if you're a Taco Bell lover, that's great. But if you just like to live Moss, that's also great, because I do both.
We love Taco Bell. So Taco Bell, if you ever want to sponsor some spooky chicks, we're here for you.
Also White Claw, please. The past week I was in Philadelphia, my first time, and I was at a conference all week. So if my voice sounds fried, it's because I was talking to a bajillion people.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playgrounds where I spend most of my days chilling. Okay, I'm gonna spare everyone that full rap, but I know it if anyone wants to challenge me. I also want to give a quick shout out to Drew at Horror Struck Hot Sauce. Drew has quickly become one of our really good friends in the spooky community, and he makes amazing hot sauce that is horror themed. And I can't even tell you, the flavor profiles are fucking fantastic. The producer and I have them stocked up in our fridge, and we use them, I think, probably on a daily basis on most things that we make. And he also sent us some really awesome t-shirts that have the iconic image from Black Monday on it. And they are so soft. I'm actually literally wearing mine as we speak. So thank you so much, Drew. Please go and follow him on Instagram at Horror Struck Hot Sauce, and maybe send him a little order. Try some hot sauce of his. They are fantastic. We love you, Drew.
Hot take. I've been putting them on my quesadillas. Very good.
So good.
Very good.
Goodness.
We love that company. We love you, Drew. Speaking of hot takes, Emma, what are you drinking today?
Ooh, I love that little transition there. I actually am on the hard tea train, and I have tried a new hard tea called Giant with a J. And this is mixed berry flavor, but me and the producer got a variety pack, and I should say that they're all pretty good, actually. They're not as twisted, but we are twisted and so getting twisted as we speak. So, Allie, what are you drinking?
I obviously have my 3 beverages that vary from week to week. We have our standard Black Cherry White Claw. I have a Harmless Harvest coconut water and a Swedish mushroom tea.
Oh my, you're lying.
I am lying, but like I thought I was on brand. for this episode.
We should have prepared that and then done this episode on like a mushroom trip.
No, I would have.
No?
No.
Okay.
I would have been dead already.
Okay, maybe another time.
No.
Okay.
You can do it. That's fine. Emma, we're not cheersing today. We're skull.
All right, so enough about us. The synopsis for today's film review of Midsommar is a couple travels to Northern Europe to visit a rural hometown's fabled Swedish Midsummer Festival. What begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult. Sounds fun to me.
Honestly, I would be
You would
joining.
partake. Yeah, you would partake.
Yeah.
Minus the mushroom tea.
I'm persuaded very easily.
She might be persuaded.
Yeah.
She might be convinced.
Yes.
And in terms of like IMDb score, this film actually got a 7.1 out of 10, which I thought was actually pretty good considering, and I'm going to go to my final thoughts like after we're done with like the film review part, but I didn't really consider this to be like super scary. And we can get into that a little later, but Allie,
Yeah.
what do you have for Rotten Tomatoes?
The tomato meter was 83%, which is to me extremely high, but I'm an asshat and I'm very judgy. But the audience score was 63, and I think that's more on par with what I would give it. And it's kind of a bigger spread of scores, tomato meter versus audience score. We don't see that big of a spread that often, so I'm kind of happy to see that.
Can I actually tell you guys? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
20% difference right there.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. Did I tell you guys though that I learned something new about the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter score, actually?
Oh, do I want to hear it?
I haven't tested the validity of this. I haven't done my own research, but I heard that a Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter score is actually not at all based on how much like someone necessarily likes the film. It's actually an accumulation of different critics, and it's the percent of critics that left a positive review about the film.
Interesting.
Yeah, I need to look into that a little bit more, but I did just recently learn like the background on how they get that score.
IMDb is so vague, so I usually go to Rotten Tomatoes to get
It gives you more info.
Yeah, but that's actually really good to know.
And then our director and writer of this film is actually both Mr. Ari Aster.
And Mr. Ari Aster is a big horror film guy, and you might have seen Hereditary. Ari describes this film that he directed and wrote as a surrealist breakup movie because he was going through a breakup at the time. And I'm like, this tracks.
Dude, can you imagine the girl or guy, I don't know where he swings, that might have been like seeing this film afterwards and was like, oh my God, I literally inspired a cult classic film.
I hope he got some film cred or like some like...
They're like
stock?
really small in the credits or like written in something in the set somewhere. And then some of the kind of main actors of the film is we have Florence Pugh, who plays Dani. She is our main character. And one thing I wanted to note here too is that Dani's surname in the film is Ardor, which is very visible on the computer screen kind of in like the more beginning parts of the film. And this is actually Latin for flame, which is a little bit of a foreshadowing of what is to come.
I low-key have beef with Florence because she was in Don't Worry, Darling.
Oh my God, I knew you were going to say this.
She was in Don't Worry, Darling with Harry Styles, and she got to like fuck around and find out with him. And I'm pretty much jealous of that. So
she found out, if you know what I mean.
She found out in like many ways. So
Ellie loves One Direction, but loves Harry Styles.
He's my hall pass.
Just so it's noted.
Yeah, he's my hall pass. And our next one is Jack Rayner, who plays Christian, and that's Dani's love interest. And I don't recognize him from anything, but I looked at his Instagram and he seems like a happy guy.
He does to me, though, look like a more kind of boring version of Seth Rogen. I said that to the producer multiple times while we were watching it. I'm like, I can't get out of my head that I feel like he's about to like do a Seth Rogen laugh. You know, that was not good, but you know what I mean.
Wow. I didn't think about that. And then we have Wilhelm Blomgren, who plays Pele.
I love Pele.
And then William Jackson Harper, who plays Josh. And if I refer to Josh as Chidi throughout this review, I'm really sorry because he's in The Good Place with Kristen Bell. And I feel like in this film, he plays the same character as in The Good Place, but in a different font. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
He's like kind of the same character. Also, I low-key think he's kind of hot. And he is actually the only American actor in this film.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I did not know that.
And then last but not least in our top build is Will Poulter, who plays Mark, who I fucking love. And he's like in We're the Millers. And if you
That's what I recognize him from. Like No Regrets, right? He's not the guy, but like that's the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So some cool things that I learned when doing like a little more research about the film is that despite the Swedish setting, this film was actually shot mostly in Hungary, which I actually thought was super cool that it was still shot in like a foreign country.
I just didn't expect Hungary to like look like that.
I know, 1000% same. This is also the 5th A24 film to be released nationwide without a platform release prior to. So the others that kind of are in that category was The Witch, which you all know is one of our favorite films. We have Free Fire, which came out in 2016. I've never seen that. It Comes at Night, 2017, and then Hereditary, 2018, which was right before Midsommar.
And you guys all know that all of like X, Pearl, Maxine are all A24 too. We fucking love A24.
A24 is definitely making a name for themselves in horror, and I'm really liking what they're putting out there. I'm really liking these storylines. Another kind of cool thing is that when this film was released in Sweden, rather than it eliciting fear in the audience, many people actually laughed, and a lot of Swedish critics actually praised the film as an excellent black comedy. And I'm going to admit, I did not know what a black comedy was specifically, and like when I heard this fact and I went and like researched what it is. A black comedy, by definition, is a film, a play, or other work that deals with tragic or distressing subject matter in a humorous way, which this film is 100% that. Another one that I had too is that most of the Swedish dialogue actually spoken by the Harga natives in this film is actually deliberately not subtitled. And this helps to just really create that sense of like isolation for the audience. So they truly have like no idea what anyone is saying. And it's like kind of spooky because they don't outright look like they're evil people, you know?
But it creates like sense of confusion when you go somewhere else and like...
You're like, I have no idea what's happening here. Something I thought was kind of cool as well, and I actually double checked this with my mom, who is Swedish. Both of her parents are born in Sweden. There are several details in the movie that are of actual Swedish folk customs and traditions. So my mom told me that Midsummer Festival is definitely a thing, and you know, even the way that they dress, all the flowers in their hair, the flower crowns, all of that stuff, a lot of these are actual real Swedish customs, which I thought was kind of cool.
So my grandma was actually May Queen at her high school. And when my mom told me that, I was like, what the fuck?
You're like, I don't know if I like that connection. Spooky.
It sounded cuter how she explained it to me.
Oh, I like, who would not want to be the May Queen? Like, hello.
I mean, that means you live, so.
Exactly. Okay, my little Swedish fish. Let's get into this film now. This film opens with a mural that kind of hints at the entire story to come. And now that I've seen this film many a time, I can say that this literally tells you the entire tale. And the camera then cuts to like a snow-covered landscape in the dead of winter, and there's like a woman kind of singing in the background with like a pretty haunting song.
My first note is the abrupt changes of sound, like going from like music to singing to like dead silence.
So like eerie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, that kind of fucks me up because I'm a jumpy girl.
So then we transition to kind of a similarly like cold and quiet Minnesota night. And we see an older couple in bed, and we also see like an answering machine. It's kind of this really weird sort of out of body view of a family's home at night while they're sleeping. And the answering machine records a message of concern from their daughter, Dani, who we actually see smiling in a bedside photo. And next to that is also a photo of her sister, Terry.
If my parents didn't pick up, I would freak the fuck out and get to their house somehow because I'm that paranoid.
100% same.
Like,
yeah.
Because I love my family so much. Also, who has a answering machine still?
Also, put it in reverse, Terry.
No.
That's all I could think of. Then the scene kind of changes, and then we see Dani, who is played by Florence Pugh, and she is in kind of a separate apartment. And we see her first kind of read this ominous email from her sister Terry, and this is probably what kind of fueled Dani's concern for her parents. And then
so she's receiving from Terry these messages like, I can't do this anymore, I'm taking mom and dad with us, like blah, blah, blah. That's pretty fucking ominous.
But also, yeah, kind of telling that some like scary shit is going to go down. Then Dani actually ends up calling her boyfriend Christian, and she's trying to kind of like tell him like, hey, I have some concerns and whatnot. He just is like, you know what? Like, I'm going to hang with the dudes and like, don't worry about it. And he's kind of like diminishing her fears or her concerns.
He's already gaslighting her, and we're not even like 5 minutes into the movie. And he's like having pizza and smoking resin. What the fuck is resin? Am I sheltered?
It's a type of weed, but I've always been scared of it my whole life.
Got it. Sorry, my bad. But she's just trying to express worry about her sister that Christian knows has issues. She's bipolar. And he's like mansplaining and being like, don't worry about it. You kind of enable it. And she's like, you're right. I'm also like, what the fuck? Don't let your boyfriend treat you like that.
I know. Seriously, I had the same thought. I'm like, dude, first of all, way to not support your lady. And second, unrelated, Florence Pugh's accent is so good for like an American accent. Like, I never knew she was foreign because this is the first film that I saw her in.
She's English?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She did such a great job. I just like wanted to point that out there.
Go girl.
You go, girl. Then she ends up calling like a female friend of hers. And this friend is also kind of questioning like, why isn't Christian supporting you more? Like, he should be kind of like, Dani's almost gaslighting herself. Like, you know, I put a lot on him and it's not really his responsibility and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. Like, he should still be there for you. And her friend's kind of trying to like communicate to like this. And she doesn't really find any help kind of from anyone in this situation. And so she actually ends up kind of taking like a sedative. And then she sends like one last kind of email to her sister, Terry, just like hoping that someone from her family can get back to her.
And actually, while she's on the phone with her friend, she gets a call from an unknown number. Girl, good for you for picking up, because I ignore every unknown number. But this was an imperative one, unfortunately.
As that's like kind of happening, then we switch over to Christian's like point of view where he's hanging out with his friends, and Mark and Pele, who are his friends that he's hanging out with at this time, are kind of reminding him too, like, hey, we have this upcoming trip to Sweden and you could find some women like the waitress. There's like a waitress at this like pizza place that they're at and she's hot. And Dani kind of makes a case for being a quote unquote psycho girlfriend or like needy girlfriend, because she's also like kind of continuously calling Christian as all of this is like happening. And then
would you call her a stage 5 clinger or like no?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I mean, I think that that's Christian's responsibility, and we can get into this way later, but like if he doesn't want to be with her, break up with her. End this poor girl's misery, because she's trying to hold on because she's probably just not a quitter and is like, I want to try to make something work with this guy.
You know that country song where it's a guy singing to a girl? Break up with him.
Oh, yes.
This is this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so Christian, eventually he picks up and we hear this guttural scream and cry like a wounded animal from the other end. And as the viewer, even the first time I saw this, I was like, oh, fuck, something happened to her family. 100%.
Do you answer like every call immediately from the producer? Like, oh, okay. She's shaking her head. Yes.
If it's anyone in my like immediate circle, like I would say, yeah. The only time I don't is honestly like if I'm just tired and I don't want to talk to one of you guys because I just don't have the energy, I will text you and just be like, hey, I'm really fucking tired right now. Can I call you in like 5 or something? You know, I really have a problem like fully ignoring people's calls, but I know you ignore me sometimes. But I just keep calling. I'm like Dani.
And I'm like Christian.
You're my asshole boyfriend.
I am.
Just kidding. Allie picks up when I call. She loves to talk to me.
I love you.
And then anyways, moving on. So then through like a series of cuts kind of in this beginning scene, we see that Dani's worst fears have been confirmed. And we see a very jarring image of 2 garden hoses that have been taped to 2 car exhausts, and we follow the hose all the way into her parents' house.
Basically, we know where this is going because we're true crime and horror fans. So they follow the hose that leads up the stairs to the room where a door has been duct taped shut. That's where we see that Dani's parents have died in their bed due to carbon monoxide poisoning, and we can allude to the fact that Terry, Dani's sister, fucking taped that shit shut. And then they continue to follow the hose into Terry's room, the sister, and we see her slumped over with something taped around her face.
It's like a funnel.
Yeah. And it's going straight into her lungs. And I'm like, oh, well, no shit, she's fucking dead. But I'm also like, how would this be possible? Because if she has already put all of the exhaust fumes into the house, how would she have time to manufacture all that? But like, it's a movie. So basically, Dani's parents and sister did.
They got different hoes and different area codes. I don't know why when you said hose, because you said it so cutely. That's what I'm sorry. That's nothing to laugh. It's not a laughing matter. That's really fucking tragic.
Yeah, it's very tragic.
I think I'm laughing because I'm dealing with it, because I wrote in my notes that this scene was so fucking tragic.
R.I.P. to Dani's entire family.
To the Arter family.
Yep.
And then later in Dani's apartment, we see Christian. He's now with her, thank God, in her apartment. And he's sitting on the couch, quote unquote, comforting her as she is cathartically crying. And honestly, Christian kind of looks like he's the one that might need consoling, because he also, you can see in his eyes that he has realized that he is kind of trapped in this relationship now for at least the foreseeable future, because he can't just break up with a girl whose whole family just died.
Can you untrap yourself? Like, this doesn't mean you have to stay together.
It's true.
Yeah.
He's just a pussy.
This could have solved a whole thing, but we'll get into that.
So then 6 months later, we see Dani and Christian, and they are still together. And she's definitely like still in mourning. And he's for sure got one foot out the door, but kind of hanging on by a thread. And he's trying to leave for a party that his friend Mark is throwing. And he tries to kind of go without her. I think she's like laying down. And he's like, oh, I'm just going to go out real quick to this party. Like, don't worry. And she's like, well, do you want me to go with you? Whatever. And he does end up like bringing her.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm that FOMO person. So I would have been asking the same thing. Like, 45 minutes, I can manage that.
Same.
Free alcohol, sweet.
Amazing. I can manage that.
Yeah.
And then they go to this party, and at the party, they're kind of talking in a group of friends, and one of the people there kind of lets it slip that Christian and his friends have been planning on going to this trip to Sweden. And despite literally leaving in 2 weeks, Christian hasn't really told Dani at all about the trip.
Not at all. And they're not only going in 2 weeks, they're going for like a fucking month or two.
Yeah, it's like an extended stay. It's so funny. Back at her apartment, Christian and Dani are kind of talking about the trip. You can tell that there's for sure like some tension. And he literally gaslights her. Oh, yeah, I mentioned this trip, or like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's just da-da-da-da. And she ends up actually trying to comfort him about his decision to go. She's like, don't worry. Like, I'm not saying you can't go. Like, I'm not mad at all that you're going. I just didn't know. Like, I would be so mad at the producer if he was going to go to the birth country of my people.
Okay.
And not invite me, you know?
I mean, I say I'd be cool about it, but you know I wouldn't be. I would very much so not be cool. But still, like, fuck you, Christian. Like, just fucking break up with her.
Just break up with her before you go to Sweden and spare everyone this. Well, not everyone, I guess, but anyways. So then later on, Dani and Christian end up going to Mark's house, or Christian's like already there, I think, talking with his dudes about their trip. And he kind of gives them a little bit of a background. Like, it's actually funny. He literally says, hey guys, I invited Dani, but she's definitely not going. Like, she's for sure not going to come. And obviously she ends up saying like, I'm gonna come. She's like, yeah, I'll come with you guys if it's all good. And it's definitely like a surprise to the group. And Mark and Josh, you can tell on their faces, they're like, holy fuck, I can't believe that this guy like caved.
Not to mention, Christian says you have to say that you guys wanted Dani to come.
Like, how shitty?
I don't know. Maybe this is intuition and it's different in everybody, but if I walked into that room of bros that are like fucking struck with this news, I would feel the tension. We don't want you, but it's in the air. It's like heavy humidity.
You can cut it with a knife, literally. Yes, 100%. I totally agree. Well, and the only person that's like halfway decent to Dani is Pele, little angel,
or is he?
I love him. Anyways,
I have thoughts.
You know, he tells her, he's like, I'm excited to take you guys. I'm going to be taking you guys to my hometown of Hälsingland.
Is that how it is pronounced?
I don't know. I actually needed to ask my mom ahead
You're
of
Swedish.
time, but I didn't.
Yeah. It's on you, bro.
It is.
He's actually excited because all the other bros have like kind of left that living room area. And Pele is the one that stays and he's like drawing. He's being a little cutie pie. Yeah, I'm excited. And then he makes things a little bit awkward by bringing up her recent loss. And he's like, I know what you're going through. I lost my parents too. And Dani starts to freak the fuck out and just be like, it's not the same. It's not the same. I feel like Pele is doing it in sort of a loving way, like in a caring way. And this is where I started to feel a little bit like, oh my God, does he want her bod?
He wants to fuck her.
Yeah.
100%. And he's also just trying to connect because I think, he has something to relate to her about that he's like, hey, dude, you're not alone. But I think because maybe there's a disconnect because he is a little foreign and because he is Christian's like really good friend that he doesn't know exactly how to connect with her.
Yeah.
But he's kind of being like, hey, I'm here for you. And we're going to see this
sure.
like throughout the film.
Oh, for sure.
So then, fast forward, they are now all traveling as a group to Hälsingland. Dani is like in the plane and she's struggling for sure. She's literally crying in the plane's bathroom. She tries to play like the brave soldier for Christian, who is like more than happy to accept this superficial assessment of things. He's probably thinking in his head, like, I mean, as long as Dani doesn't like cause a scene or anything, and if she can just hang it in there, like, I can have an okay trip.
Yeah, but does it? Okay.
She does.
Okay.
But I think like he's at the very beginning, like, okay, maybe this will be okay. She's trying to hide it, I think, from him and the group as much as possible, that she's still having kind of a hard time.
For sure. And I'm pretty sure they sit in an aisle and window seat and like not in the middle.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
it's very weird.
It's very weird.
Very weird. So then the group actually arrives, and they arrive at first near Pele's homeland, or his like little town that he's like from. And it's funny because we see clumps of like mostly blonde people picnicking in a meadow. And some of them like come to greet Pele. And in particular, his brother, or he says his brother, Ingmar, who is there, is like actually kind of surprised to see him. And Pele introduces him to his American friends. And then Ingmar introduces his London friends, Simon and Connie, who we get an introduction to. So then Ingmar produces a bag of mushrooms. And everyone kind of in the group except Dani wants to try them.
They're all jet lagged. Why would they want to do that immediately? I'm also a wuss, and I'd be like, no.
That's like a recipe for a bad trip in my mind.
I also have never done mushrooms, so.
So anyways, then Dani succumbs to the peer pressure and agrees to have a little bit of mushroom tea, which I think would be a little bit more up my alley.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I love how like she's like, yeah, fuck it, sure, whatever. But I love how they're all hanging out, and Mark, who is like the kind of jokester asshole of the American group, like you're typical American. We're American, so we can say that. And he's the most excited to do the drugs, and he's the one that gets he's tripping out the most, and he's like looking at the sky, and he's like, it's 9 p.m. Why is it light out? They're like, it's the midnight sun. Or
he's
whatever.
Freaking out.
He's freaking the fuck out. And he's like, why is it light out? I don't like that. I don't want any new people to come sit with us. And he's like, I need everybody to just lay down with me right now.
I love when he says that. He's like, everybody, if you guys could all just lay down, right?
That would be me. That's how we were talking about earlier on cold tile. I'm like, just lay down with me.
And Dani's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here and go on a walk. She's trying to kind of like stave off like an oncoming panic attack. And this happens because Mark basically says like, you guys are my family. And as soon as he says it, it's like she like comes to a tiny bit and is like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, because she's about to like have a meltdown. And all I gotta say is during the scene though, like Dani's skin is on fleek. Like I need her skincare routine, like the sunshine on it. Like where are those pores? Because they ain't there. She looked great.
Florence Pugh, drop that.
Let us know.
Yeah.
So then she actually ends up kind of making her way to an outhouse, and she's tripping pretty hard. And I will say one thing that I've always been told if you are going to take mushrooms is to never look in a mirror. And I think this goes like with acid as well, or any kind of like hallucinogenic drug. And what does she do? She looks in the mirror in the outhouse, and she sees an image of her dead sister appearing behind her. And then as she keeps looking in the mirror, her face also becomes warped. And Dani has a flash also of seeing her parents and her sister before she's suddenly kind of like awoken by Christian, and we can tell that like some time has passed. And when she awakes, she's like fully sober, and she realizes it's most likely like a new day. And Christian has also kind of officially forgotten her birthday, which we come to find out.
Yeah, fuck that. Girl, get you a man who appreciates and remembers its birthday month. But we're in the field and the group is walking now through a forest, and Mark, my favorite guy, is like, yo, are there ticks around here? And everybody in the group starts to fuck with him, and they're like, yeah, there's a deadly tick problem. And Ari Aster, the director / writer, actually included this in the film because he has a real fear of ticks, and I kind of do too.
So, and then when the group arrives at Hälsingland, all of the people are like overjoyed to see the return of Pelle. And it kind of gives this like feeling that not many ever leave what they called the Harga. And these are like the Harga people of Hälsingland.
Okay, your pronunciation. I mean, it's spot on, I'm pretty sure.
Don't judge me. And all of these people too. The minute you see all of them, they are all bright. They're all wearing white. They have florals all around them, either like embroidered into their costume or on their head. And they're super welcoming and they just seem like so light and happy.
And we hear this score that freaks me the fuck out. And it's da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And we'll hear it throughout the film, whether it's in score or people's chanting. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, what does that allude to? Doesn't mean anything, but I noticed it. And I don't know if you guys caught this, but when they arrive, Mark is like, okay, so I guess we're going to wake up before we get to Pelle's village. I'm like, that would be me. I would be saying that, but I've also been to Waco. But I'm also the first girl, so I'd be dead by now.
I don't think by now. I think you still are holding on.
The mushrooms would have killed me.
You think? No, that's anticlimactic.
No, I would have done something stupid and
we should do a rewrite of this movie.
Okay.
Where we're in there.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll do that.
But once they're kind of getting introduced to the villagers and all that shit, we start to really see Josh's interest in the history and tradition of the village, which we will see a lot in the film. At first, he's like, oh, so how is this traditional? And can I take pictures? And Pelle's like, nah, brah. And he will get killed for this.
And kind of as all of this is happening too, like Ali said, there's like some pretty kind of intense like background music and it's all swelling as these like quote unquote ceremonies kind of start to begin. And we see 10 children and they are giving floral wreaths or like crowns to 10 what seem to be elders kind of in this like village. And then we get introduced to Siv, who is the elders like spokesperson. And she kind of like officially starts the ceremony.
And she starts to announce like the party that's going to be happening. And she says it's a 9-day fucking feast. I am 33. I don't know if I can hang for a 9-day feast with like all of these traditions and ceremonies. I like to think that I could, but like, I don't know, man.
I agree with you, Els. I also like to think that I could because, I mean, if we're just in sunshine and my bare feet can be in the grass and, like, we're just eating and drinking all day, like, that sounds fabulous. But also, like, I can barely hang on stage, like, day 3 of Stagecoach.
That's what I was going to say. This seems like Coachella, but 9 days.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, maybe if we, like, paced ourselves with the mushrooms, it would be okay. But then Siv, there's, like, 2 elders that in particular that she hands the largest, like, floral wreaths or crowns. And this is where we get introduced to Ilva and Dan. And we also see kind of flaming torches get handed to them as this is all happening. And we see a child / kind of like teenager also who we get introduced to who has some pretty severe deformities. And he's kind of like painting off to the side of the ceremony, almost like he's like painting what's going on.
Yeah, and Homeboy is important and we'll bring him up later, but keep in mind our important Homeboy.
Yeah, do not forget him. As these ceremonies are starting to happen, almost like a conga line of people. And so everyone's like joining in a line and they're all like kind of dancing and running. And this one gal, Maya, she actually ends up kicking Christian in the ass as he's sitting down with like the rest of the kind of, I'm going to call them the foreigners because technically they are the foreigners.
I call them like the outsiders or the visitors.
Okay,
yeah.
That's good. The visitor. I like the outsiders. Okay. And she kicks him in the ass as she's like dancing with the villagers in this like line of hand holding. And it's like super clear that she's like, hey, bitch, you're cute.
Probably what my approach would have been.
I was going to say, I could see Allie totally doing that.
But so as that happens, one of our outsiders asks, what are the kids, what are they playing? And Ingmar says, it's called the Skin the Fool.
Oh my God, I didn't even put that together.
Skin the Fool. So that's what they're dancing to and playing.
Skin the Fool.
Skin the Fool. And we'll come back to that.
Wow.
Yep.
So then Christian and Josh actually end up dancing. They're like, can we join? And as they get up, Pele hands Dani this beautiful portrait that he has done of her as a birthday present. And it's so funny because he doesn't even really say anything, I don't think, but Dani immediately moves to just defending Christian about his thoughtlessness and about him forgetting her birthday. She's like obviously grateful that he like gave her this beautiful gift, but she's like, oh, you know, it's okay. Like he didn't forget. It's just the timing, like blah, blah, blah. It's just like, she's just making excuses for this guy.
Always.
So then Pele ends up leading the visitors, the outsiders on a tour of kind of like the whole compound. And Josh in the group particularly, he's asking a lot of questions. He's very curious about the culture and what's going on. And one thing I actually noticed in my latest watch is that as they're kind of touring this compound, we actually see a random bear in a cage as they're walking along the tour.
So somebody who says that, is that a bear?
Yes, someone said, I forget who says it.
Are we just going to ignore the bear?
Yeah, it's probably Mark.
I think it's Christian or maybe Mark. I'm not sure. Are we just going to ignore the bear? And Pele's like, yeah, that's a bear.
He's like, it's a bear, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just a bear in a cage. No big deal. Like we would never see that in the US, just like out in the open. And then Connie actually spots a beautiful piece of tapestry. And it's funny because when you see it as a whole, you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. But then when you really start to look at the different pieces of it, you can tell that it's apparently a love story. And the details are actually kind of disturbing. And the drawings essentially illustrate a girl seeing a guy being like, that's my guy. And then it immediately moves to her shaving her pubic hair, putting it in some sort of drink or concoction, and then serving the man that she has a crush on the drink. And all of this is illustrated in graphic detail on this tapestry. And it's just like so wild to me, but I love it. And it's telling to what's going to happen.
It's telling to what's to come, but like also why would you put that for everybody to display? Like even the young child, I don't know.
It's clearly like part of their tradition of how they court in this like whatever.
We eat hot dogs. They eat pubic hairs.
In their mushroom tea.
Yes.
And then we kind of see them get introduced to the like main house. And this is where everyone sleeps. So it's literally this like giant open house with all of these different like beds. And there's, I think, like 2 levels. And
the top level doesn't have a railing. So people
it's
literally
very
just
scary.
Yeah, it's so sketch.
And everyone sleeps in this like very large communal room, and it's decorated in even more graphic paintings and like runic symbols, which will come into play as well kind of later in the film.
Oh, for sure. And I'm like, everybody, all the young people, whether you're a baby or like 36, you're all sleeping in the same room. And I'm like, fuck no, I need my fan. People are snoring. I am so out.
It's so funny how, I mean, even in like the military, right? Like you have to just learn how to sleep in these like situations. But then there's people like us that are like, someone moves and I'm like, fuck you. I can't sleep.
100%. Like I'm so, it's crazy.
Well, and like Ali said too, or started to kind of explain. So Pele actually ends up telling the group that the way that the hierarchy of the village kind of works is sort of laid out in seasons. So the spring of life, so to speak, is you as a person up until the age of 18. Then this leads into summer for those 18 to 36.
And that's, I will say, that's what all of these young people who've come to visit are, they're in that age gap. So
they're in midsummer.
They're in their midsummer season. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I thought it was super interesting.
And then Pele tells them too that this is also the time where a lot of these youngins kind of do their time of pilgrimage. So a lot of them will actually leave the compound like Pele has. And they'll kind of go out into the real world. And like, it almost reminds me of the Amish, like Rumspringer, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Did you ever watch that show?
Oh, yeah.
Story for a different time.
Yeah. Love that show. And then those 36 to 54 are technically in their like fall era, and they are required to work. And then the winter is for those 54 to 72. And this is when they kind of become like mentors or the elders of the village. And it's funny in this scene because as Pele is like explaining all of this, Dani is like, well, what happens at 72? And literally Pele doesn't answer, and the whole conversation kind of just shifts to something else.
He literally signals with his fingers, like he cuts it across his throat.
Oh, does he? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he cuts it across his throat and he's like, oh, they're offed. And I think everybody, all of the outsiders thought it was a joke, but like, as we'll see.
They're probably like, haha, that's not going to actually happen.
Yeah, but bitches.
Spooky.
Yeah.
Well, so then they're all kind of getting acquainted in this like communal room, getting their stuff together. And Pele actually takes Christian aside to remind him of Dani's birthday, which is so fucked up.
Pele either wants to be a good friend to Christian or fuck Dani or be both. I'm not sure.
He has ulterior motives for sure.
Yeah.
And he's trying to show Christian, like, you're a piece of shit. I'm fucking way better than you.
Yeah.
As like this is all happening, Dani, on the other hand, is kind of noticing these like photos that they have like framed in this like communal room, and they're pictures of the previous May queens from years prior. And Pele says, you know, these are all of the winners of the annual dance contest. And as this is like kind of happening, one of the other village girls kind of comes to tell Pele and the gang that some of the children are actually watching Austin Powers in another area of the commune if anyone would like to join. And this is so random because you're like, wait, they have TV access and like electricity, and also hell
Fuck
yes,
yeah.
I'm down.
I'm like, I am so in. I am there with popcorn and candy already.
I'm not going to lie. That was a redeeming line for me. Like, I was like, if there is one thing I fucking love about this is that they threw Austin Powers into this.
We have comedic relief. I love it.
We do. We do. I love it.
Also, while this young maiden, what do you call her? Maiden?
Villager.
Sure.
Sure. Maiden.
While this is happening, Mark also notices a young villager glance at him, and he notices her beauty, and he's like, I want to give her a bath.
It's the same one, right?
It's the same one.
Yeah.
So this will come into play later to his demise.
Yeah.
Spoilers. We told you.
So Christian then ushers Dani kind of like outside as all of this is happening, and he gives her a little birthday cake.
Basically, it looks like he got her like something from like 7-Eleven. No shade. I love
no shade. I was gonna say I love a slice of cake from like Vaughn's or like a grocery.
Oh, and the cookies from 7-Eleven. Mom, you know what's up. Mom knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. But basically, he gets her a little piece of bitch cake and puts a candle in it, and he's like expecting everything to be forgiven, and I'm like, nah, brah. But Dani's also being her little submissive, if you will, self, and she's like, it's great. Stop trying to light it. You can't do it. Christian finally lights it, and while she's blowing out the candle, if you notice, you can hear her cadence of breath, and it goes.
That was good, Els. You really nailed that. That's going to come into play later.
Yes.
And as they're talking too in this scene, we see a group of 4 women behind them kind of in the background, and they are trying to comfort a constantly crying baby, and they're all together rocking back and forth in like unison, and it's like very creepy. And then again, you hear the
and what I thought that was important about this scene too is they're all holding each other and holding the baby, and Pele references holding each other and holding people and feeling like a family throughout this film. So I was like, this is just more foreshadowing of that point.
100%. Like, you really truly do. The more you watch this film, you notice so much every
100%.
single time. And then later on, like before everyone kind of goes to bed, Pele says that the very next day, it's actually going to be the very first ceremony of Midsommar, known as Atisbuten, which Pele won't say exactly what it is. And this worries Dani a bit. You can tell she's kind of like, okay, what? But Josh seems to have an idea of, which I actually didn't catch the first couple times I saw this, like back in the day when I think I saw this in theaters when it first came out, and I didn't catch that. But upon reviewing it several times since, I catch that Josh has an idea of what's going on. And it's kind of crazy that he doesn't question it, probably because it's so outlandish that he probably doesn't think it's actually going to happen.
Well, and Josh was like, is it actual? And Pele's like,
he kind of dismisses it, right?
No, Pele's like, it's actual. It's pretty actual. And I'm like, okay, fucking Josh, don't keep that from your friends who are about to be traumatized for fucking life or death.
Yeah. I mean, there you go.
So one of the rituals begins with a large communal meal.
And there's also like a ringing of a bell as the 2 elders who we kind of talked about a little earlier in the podcast, who kind of had the biggest like floral arrangement given to them. they join the group at the very top intersection of these like large tables. And I actually kind of love the way that these tables are laid out, because I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a wedding or like a huge dinner where it's just like very, very long tables, right? But they have so many people in this like village that they sort of intersect them in like lines that kind of cross over each other. And I think that the way that they do it is really clever to kind of make everyone feel very included. But anyway, I could go down like a whole rabbit hole of that.
Well, I think they do it like some of the sigils on their ceremony rocks and like
like the runics or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there's this eerie scene of these like two elders who at this point you're kind of starting to put together as the viewer that they are probably the oldest in the entire group or the entire village, of them walking from a yellow A-frame building that is going to come into play a lot later.
And it really is eerie. Like, that's a good point, Emma. Like, it's this whole yellow A-frame is so pivotal. But while they're walking out, you can see this meal setup that she was talking about, and you can see the stark contrast of all of the actual insiders or villagers or whatever we want to call them in their bright white clothing, and you can see the outsiders in their darker clothing. So I thought that was a really cool visual, just to point out, like,
it was a clear contrast.
It was a clear contrast, like to point out who's kind of fucked and who's not.
Totally.
And while we're at this table, we can also see Maya creating something that will come to play later. And I'm like, this bitch, she knows what she wants.
Yeah, honestly, I can't fault her for that. And then after they consume this meal, Ylva and Dan, who are those older elders, they sing a song. They like stand up and sing a song, and they toast each other. And then like everyone else toasts them as well. And they're hoisted up into chairs to be carried up a hill by the other villagers.
And they look like sad.
They totally look sad.
They don't look like they're in a celebratory festival setting. They look like they're fucking sad.
It already feels at this point like something fucking sinister is about to happen.
Yeah.
And then Mark actually says, hey, I'm going to like go lay down for a nap. And then everyone else kind of follows the procession. And we're going to get into a kind of an intense scene, but Ylva and Dan are carried up to this hilltop while everyone else in the village walks to the valley, or like kind of part like below this like hilltop cliff area. And again, Josh kind of seems to know like what's coming, and he asks Pele if he can read some of their scripture because he's like deeply curious about their culture.
Yeah, one of the the leaders is like reading from one of their scriptures, and he's like, bruh, let me read that. And Pele's like, nah, man. And Josh is also awkwardly calm for knowing what the fuck's to come. And I'm just going to say this whole scene fucks me up because I know it's coming every time since the first time I watched it.
Absolutely. Well, and then Siv is at the very top and she reads from a sacred passage, and Ylva and Dan, Sylv is at the bottom actually. And she's reading from a sacred passage to the rest of the villagers. And then we see Ylva and Dan, and they are risen from their chairs, and they actually cut their palms and then rub their bloody hands together and put their handprints on these large rune stones at the top of the hill and like the edge of the cliff where they're standing.
I have a question. What do you like as an outsider? What the fuck do you think's gonna happen?
I literally immediately would. It's so weird because it's almost like a train wreck, right? Like they say, like
you can't look away.
You can't look away.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd be right there. I would maybe put myself somewhere where I could like hide behind a rock or something so that I could shelter myself when that time came. So I don't know, but that's a good question.
But like, yeah.
Like, what would you do? Yeah.
This is extenuating circumstances because we live in our country. Like,
and it's so surreal because you're like, wait, is this actually going to fucking happen? Like, holy shit. Well, and so Ylva and Dan are risen from their chairs, like we said. And then Ylva actually ends up going to the edge of the cliff first. And she pauses and kind of gestures like to the heavens. And then she jumps. And she lands right in front of everyone with a thud, like 200 something feet below, onto literal jagged rocks. And it is so graphic.
It's so, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but imagine like a watermelon or pumpkin or something.
That's a great analogy.
Like your head smashing like that on a rock. So
and you see it. And this is our first taste of real graphic scenes like in this film.
And meanwhile, the villages are all like putting their hands down in like a yoga pose. Like, we're just happy to be here. Like,
They're like, oh, this is chill.
this is normal. And they're like, yeah, it's normal. Let's
fucking
just keep
Sunday.
It's,
I don't know.
Yeah, let's just keep watching.
Let's get some mushroom tea after this. Like, what's going on? It's crazy. Well, and then Connie and Simon, who are like the British or English travelers that are friends with Ingmar, they freak the fuck out, which I would have probably a reaction like them. And
Same.
Dani goes straight into shock. Poor girl literally just had her whole family die. And then you're going to make her freaking watch people kill themselves? Like, oh my God. Then, almost right after one another, Dan, he goes to the edge, reaches up, looks down at fucking Dani, and then launches himself off this cliff as well. And he lands very awkwardly. I think the producer said he did a pencil dive, which is if you're gonna jump off something, you never pencil dive, because that's like asking for you to mutilate yourself and still be alive. I don't know how he knows that, but anyways. And he lands super awkwardly, mutilates himself, and he's not dead. And literally, Simon yells as this is happening. He's like, someone get an ambulance. He's like, this dude is fucked up. And Ingmar is like trying to console him. Everything is okay, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 men they're called cudgels, which are these long handled clubs, go to fucking work on Dan's head to try to finish the job. This is so fucking graphic.
And 2 of them look like young girls that are trying to do this.
It's crazy. Well, and the first blow doesn't even kill him. And then, thank God, mercifully, the second one does.
And then, obviously, our outsiders are like, what the actual fuck? And Civ, our like our ceremonial leader, is like, no, chill out. This is how they would have wanted to go. We're saving them from rotting. It's an honor and a great joy for them to leave the earth this way. But still, like, honestly, what the actual fuck?
Yeah, she basically says, like, they wanted this. This is something that, like, they would have been totally okay with, and blah, blah, blah.
She also explains that, like, they want the next babies in their born cycle in the village to be named, how do you say it?
Ylva and Dan.
Yes.
Yeah, she's like, it's basically the cycle of life, like the seasons, and it was just the end of their season. And I will say, devil's advocate, there are things that go on in the world outside of the US of A that we may not understand culturally, but still, Ingmar should have warned his fucking friends, which is actually...
Pele should have warned his friends.
Well, and Ingmar. Ingmar should have warned Simon and Connie as well.
They should have all warned each other.
There should have been a warning.
There should have been a warning, like, what the actual fuck? And like you said, people are freaking the fuck out. Simon and Connie are like, we're leaving on the next bus out, whatever. I'd be dead by now, but like, I hope you're going to be okay in this, Emma.
So spooky.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just the whole thing is so wild. And no one's like buying it. Like Simon and Connie are like, nah, dude. Like you guys can try to explain away this culture shit, but we're not into it. And a fun fact I actually have about this, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to try to say this without butchering some of the names, but the practice of atuspa, atespoa, or however we were saying it earlier, is actually effectively a myth. So as depicted, the elderly were expected to sacrifice for the good of a village, maintaining efficiency. However, the original source of the story is actually a 13th century Icelandic account in Gatrek's saga, and supposedly the Atespoas in Norway and Scandinavia have all been proven to have been only referred to as such by 18th and 19th century historians with no prior references to any such practices. So most serious historians actually consider the story a reflection of Icelandic medieval tradition of depicting Swedes as barbarous on the account of them converting to Christianity a century later than Iceland. So it's like kind of a made up story. Basically, the Swedes are just savage.
So you're a savage is what you're saying.
I mean, look at me.
I'm a savage. Is that a song?
You're a savage. Classy, ratchet.
Yeah, that one. Okay.
And then going back to the village, Dani rightfully breaks away from the group because she needs some goddamn alone time. And it's so weird because as Josh and Christian have just like seen all of this, they seem like kind of intrigued about witnessing that the Atespoa.
We're getting worse and worse about
it. But Josh's excitement kind of like evaporates because Christian tells him that he's like decided to center his thesis around the Harga, which is again the community that Pele is a part of.
Okay, so I don't know how theses work. Theses?
Theses.
Because I don't have a PhD, obviously. But it's fucked how Christian did not tell Josh before, because it alludes to like he had been thinking about this the entire time. And everyone knew in their friend group that Midsommar at Harga was Josh's thing.
And that's Hälsingland.
Hälsingland.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I think like Christian is just proving himself time and time again to be a trash person.
100%. I think they all have different kinds of like sinful natures, and we kind of see that throughout the film, and that's how they're set to die. But that's a whole different podcast, maybe. But I think it's still fucked up. Like, would you tell me, like, if we were doing a PhD program, like, and I was doing something, and then you were like, I want to do that too.
I think I would still broach the topic with you and see what you said. But if you were like, no, I'm shutting that down, I'd be like, all right. I tried. You know me. I'm like a try and see what happens. But like, if you were like, no, Emma, don't do that. I don't want you to. I'd be like, oh, fuck, you got a good topic, but I'll do something else.
I mean, genuinely, I'd be like, let's just divide and conquer.
I was going to say, I knew you and I would be like, let's figure out a way to make it epic. Well, and then Josh is like livid that Christian would even take part of any of this research from him, especially as Josh has been the one like kind of carrying him through their program is kind of what it seems like. Like, it seems like Christian has just been kind of floating on the like coattails of his friends. And the two now at this point, I think, are kind of like becoming frenemies a little bit.
While this kind of frenemy strife is happening outside, Mark wakes up, our little Marky Mark, and he's like, bros, of all the things you can let me sleep through, you let me sleep through like a double suicide, basically.
So crazy.
Not a laughing matter, but
no, it isn't. But
we see Mark. We see you, Mark.
Yeah. Well, and then Simon and Connie like straight up tell the guys after all of this has happened that they're like planning to leave. They're like, we're leaving the next day. We are like deeply disturbed about what happened. And honestly, I'm like, I would probably do the exact same thing. Like, bro, that's just not okay. And again, like I said, like devil's advocate, yes, it's a different culture and they have different cultural norms, and that is totally okay. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that I would be uncomfortable. And I think I would probably try to remove myself from the situation.
And like I always say, I would either be bouncing the fuck out or probably dead, or I would already be a part of the village or commune.
Allie's like already in the white dress and has a flower crown and is like,
I'm preparing to be the May Queen.
She's making pubic pies.
Yeah. No, legit.
Well, and then so Josh ends up approaching Pele kind of after all this has happened to ask if he can study the Hargas officially and have access to some of their materials. And Pele is like, I don't know if that's like cool, but I guess I'll like ask.
He does that with frustration and hesitation. And he also then reveals that Christian had asked him to do the same thesis, but fucking Christian did not tell Josh that beforehand. And I'm like, bros are not being bros.
He's slimy. He's slimy. And then back at like the communal like house where they're all like sleeping, Pele finds Dani and she's like packing up and crying. And he ends up like coming to kind of like comfort her, and he offers like condolences to her. And again, he kind of brings up like, I've lost my parents too when I was young. And it's just like heartbreaking because he kind of doesn't let her brush him off. Like, she's trying to brush him off and be like, Pele, no, da-da-da. But like, he kind of just keeps going.
Yeah, he also starts to explain, yes, like I'm technically an orphan too. And how when he came to that situation, he felt held by the community that he was in Harga. And what is it? Harzfeld?
Hälsingland.
Okay. That was very
well, and Pele does grab her hand too, and he's like, do you feel held by Christian?
Right.
Which I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
He's asking the real questions. And he's like, does Christian feel like home to you? Whew.
But that means something. Like, we see that throughout the rest of the end of the film is the holding and feeling like a community. And I feel like Pele is like, this bitch needs it. Like, let's hold her.
He's like, I have recruited one to come to the community.
Exactly.
And Christian ends up actually finding Dani sitting by herself in the grass. And they kind of talk about like what just happened and what they saw during the day. And, you know, she's like, were you not like disturbed by what we like saw? And he basically just tells her, you know, I'm trying to keep an open mind. It's cultural and we need to try to acclimate.
So she's obviously expressing like concern, and he's just really like gaslighting her again. I hate to keep using that, but he's gaslighting her.
It's so classic gaslighting. It's like not even funny.
Also, like, if you need to bounce because you're disturbed, fucking go on your own, girl. You do not need a Christian.
At all. In any sense of the word.
Yeah. And I've been in a situation. I went to the running of the bulls in Pamplona with my friend Catherine, and we both were shocked by what we saw, and we bounced.
Did you? I don't know if I fully unpacked that with you.
Let's not.
We should get into that. Oh, okay. Never mind. And then later on, as they're kind of getting ready for bed, Dani asks Josh if she can actually have one of his sleeping pills. And as she has this, she ends up having a dream. And this dream is so spooky. It's like she has a dream of all of the guys leaving her in the middle of the night, like here at Helsingland. But it's actually nighttime, which I thought was like an interesting note versus it being like daylight as it's been throughout this whole film.
Yeah.
And she has this dream of them like leaving her at the commune and driving away. And she screams. And as she screams, we see this dark smoke coming out of her mouth. And then we get these like in and out shots of not only the dead elders at the bottom of the cliff where they fell and she saw earlier, but then it actually turns into her family at the bottom of the cliff, like dead. And it's like, it's so spooky to watch.
It really is. And then while this horrifying nightmare is going through Dani's sleepy brain, Maya, our little redheaded horny girl, she approaches Christian's bed and she leaves her little love rune under his bed.
It recalls like a panel from the ceremonial carpet. It was like one of the steps in like this whole process that we saw a little earlier when Connie was looking at that tapestry. And pretending to be asleep, actually Josh sees this all happen and he watches Maya's actions.
And he doesn't fucking do a thing. But obviously Maya wants to get it from Christian.
Yeah.
And then we see Mark and Josh, who are like looking for Pele, who's like being a little gardening boy and tending to their flowers and everything. And Josh is like, what'd the elders say about the research?
Well, and they basically say like we'll allow it, but it must not reveal any identities or location. And it also has to be like split with Christian. And so Josh is like ecstatic about the first condition, but less happy about it having to be split with Christian. Well, and then Josh actually produces Maya's rune stone and asks Pele what it is. And Pele tells him that it was actually used for love spells. It's funny because Pele's kind of like, oh, yeah, this is used for like love spells. Like it's just a normal thing around the village.
Also, how the fuck old is Maya?
I think it's indicated later on that she is 15, but we will talk about it later.
That is gross.
And then Christian approaches and is really happy with both of the elders' conditions, obviously. And Pele informs Christian that Maya is his sister and that she likes him. And he also feels the need to tell Christian that she is now at an age where she is allowed to have sex, which is very weird.
So I'm just like, who the fuck determines that that's the age you're allowed to have sex? First of all, Josh and Christian are just both like, word, cool, and then move on.
Literally, just like, bye, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then before the conversation can get any more awkward, a male villager, his name is Ulf, he goes absolutely nuts and he starts like approaching Mark. He's yelling at him and he's yelling at him because Mark has decided to urinate at the base of this beautiful fallen tree, the Rotvalta. It's the site of the ashes of all of their elders.
And it's like the one laying down and the roots are up.
Yep.
And I'm also like, this tree is hella out in the open. Like it's literally exposed in the entire village. Why would you choose to fucking piss there, dude? Go in the woods.
It's insane. And then Connie comes upon Dani in the main house and starts packing. And it's kind of like weird because Dani's sort of just like noticing like Connie is very like hectic. She's like packing quickly. And Father Odd enters and says that Jan, one of the other like villagers, is going to be driving Simon to the train station and that they will come back for Connie. And he essentially says that there's only room for two in this like truck that they have and that they don't want to break any traffic laws.
I'm like, fuck that. Steal the truck and break those rules. Lay down in the bed of the truck. Do whatever you have to do to get the fuck out of there.
It's so crazy. And then Connie actually isn't buying any of this. And she basically storms off as Dani like witnesses like this whole altercation.
And Connie is storming off, and Odd looks at Dani and just like, cool. Yeah, she's pissed, but lunch is served soon, boo.
He's like, moving on.
Yeah.
And then Dani ends up like informing Christian, like later on, she finds him and she's like, hey, I just want to like let you know, like Simon left without Connie. And it's like really sitting with her weird. And he just kind of like brushes it off, and he just doesn't seem to care. And he goes on with just like questioning some of the other villagers like about their lives.
I would be pissed if my significant other just literally didn't listen to what I was saying with my concerns and was just like, I heard what you said, kind of. Anyways, and then go to another person and say, tell me more about your history of this village.
100%.
Fuck that.
Yeah. And then he ends up asking one of the villagers like about incest. And one of them tells him that sometimes cousins actually do end up mating, but often it's the outsiders that are invited in to kind of avoid the incest situation.
Which
also,
is important. That's important.
That's very important. Mm-hmm. It's going to come into play a little later. And as this conversation is happening at like the tables, Christian actually sees Josh being led into Reuben's temple by someone named Arnie. And I don't know if we addressed that the kid's name was Reuben earlier, but we did mention someone who it was a child or teenager who had some pretty severe deformities. And
on purpose.
And his name is Reuben.
And he's the one that writes the new scripture for the entire village.
He's considered like a prophet in this village.
And so Christian is looking at Josh being led in there and obviously gets jealous. And I'm just like, life's not a competition, bro.
Yeah, like let it go, dude.
Let it
fine.
go.
You're in a fucking foreign country. And then Dani is invited to help the women make some meat tarts. So she's like split off from Christian, and she asks one of the gals if they have seen Simon anywhere. And it seems like this girl just responds with like a very rehearsed answer that, oh, you know, he was driven to the station.
So I'm like, is everybody in on this whole ploy of getting our sacrifices and shit?
I think so. Yes,
yeah.
100%.
Also, could I just be a girl's girl and just bake with other girls all day and like have a fun time?
And like not have like weird like multiple suicides and like killings go on.
Yeah, but also like dance in the flowers. Like I'm here for
I want all
that.
the good things.
Yeah.
We want all the good things. And Maya, our little, what'd you call her? Little horny girl.
Yeah, our little horny girl.
She has made a tray of meat tarts, and it's kind of hard to see and you can easily miss it, but there is one specially kind of labeled with like a basil leaf, and
I definitely missed that. So good for you for catching that.
And it's labeled specifically because it's special, and that's going to come into play in a minute. But side note, as like that's all happening in Reuben's temple, like we said, Arnie like led Josh in there, and they are now inside, and we get a sneak peek at what's going on in there. And they're standing at the altar next to a book, a Bible, so to speak. And it is called the Ruby Radar, and it is on a pedestal, and it is essentially their Bible.
It's like the only thing in that creepy ass small.
Yeah, it's like
big. I don't know. It's like creepy and small and big at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and the text in it is like runic symbols, and there are also just throughout this whole like temple are thousands of books that look just like it, kind of lining the walls. And Josh starts looking through the current version, and he's describing the text as sort of like emotional sheet music, and it's like a lot of paintings and symbols, and there are some empty pages at the very end, and this is for Reuben, the deformed boy that Dani had met earlier, to add to, and it's specifically left for him. And Josh also kind of comes to find out that Reuben is the intentional product of inbreeding, with new ones, quote unquote, being created as needed. And basically, it's like they purposely inbreed to get these children that they believe are direct prophets to like their god.
And kind of going back to the incest thing, it's like it's your bloodline. So we're tracking the bloodline with the incest, and this is how we get our prophecies.
Yeah, it's so weird.
And meanwhile, obviously Josh is like very curious. He's like, can I take pictures of this? Can I take videos of this? And homie's like, no, don't.
Well, he like screams at him. He's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, do not, you know? And so like, I don't know. That's like a clear tiff that they're like having between like the villagers and the visitors, right?
Totally. And then while all of this is happening, we see a couple different scenes of Josh, Christian, and Mark hearing a woman scream in the distance in different locations. And I'm like, okay, who the fuck do we think this bitch is?
Totally. And later, as like the entire group is sitting down for supper, some of the servers start to place these like meat pies that the women made in front of everyone. And Maya's special pie is placed in front of Christian. So you guys can guess what's happening here. And Dani ends up asking like about Connie and like, has anyone seen Connie? Like, what's going on? And Mark says that he saw her running earlier. And a villager ends up like kind of jumping into the conversation and explains that Simon had called Connie to calm her down. And, you know, she apologized for her agitation and that someone gave her a ride to the station. And it just sounds like even more rehearsed than
scripted.
Like the other person had provided.
It's more an indication of the scriptedness of it. And I'm also like, why isn't Dani the only one asking about everybody's disappearances? Like, why is she the only one, like, being fazed by it? Like,
yeah, no one is questioning
They basically
it.
lost half of their outsider friends. Like, how was nobody else concerned?
No, it's so crazy. Well, and Christian, like, fully buys it. Like you said, it's like no one's concerned but Dani. And she's, like, criticizing him kind of for being, like, thoughtless a little bit.
She's like, I could basically see you leaving me like Simon left Connie.
I mean, girl, yes, finally call his ass out.
Meanwhile, while that strife is happening... Ulf,
the
guy that caught Mark pissing on the
sacred tree,
is like staring daggers into Mark's body. He's looking into his face like, I will fucking kill you for pissing on my ancestral tree.
He's like, you gone, bitch.
You gone, bitch.
Well, then Christian starts arguing with Josh about their thesis collaboration and him seeing like the ruby radar, and Christian's attention turns to a bite he just took out of the meat pie, and he picks a hair out of his mouth that he just ingested, and literally Mark is like, is that a fucking pube? Which I love. It's so direct. It's so perfect.
I apologize in advance for this. What is it? The curtains matched the drapes.
What does that mean, Ellie?
No. If you're listening to this, you should know that.
Well, and then Christian spies Maya watching him intently. And Dani also notices this. And I think this is like kind of one of the first times that she's like directly like, oh shit, this gal is now really going after my man. And Mark is still kind of shaken by like the whole Ulf stare off. And Inga asks him to come with her. And she says, I will show you. And Mark is like, oh yeah, beautiful Inga. Of course I'm going to go with her.
He's like, yeah, fuck yeah. She's going to show me.
Like, it's fine. Yeah.
he just says to his friends, like, she's going to show me. So fucking vague.
You would go too.
Oh, well, that's my toxic trait. Yes, I would.
Honestly, I might too, honestly.
Nah, you're stronger than I am.
Well, and then later at bedtime, Dani ends up taking like another sleeping pill. And after everyone is asleep, and Dani is actually like fully asleep at this time, and we're not getting at least any insight into any like dreams she's having, we see that Josh goes to sleep and he has his sneakers on. And he actually sneaks out in the middle of the night to go to Reuben's temple because he's trying to get a taste. You know what I mean? And he actually ends up creeping past a sleeping Reuben and starts taking photos of the pages of the ruby radar. And he is interrupted by who he thinks is Mark.
And it's definitely not Mark. It's actually Ulf. Who's wearing
a Mark suit.
A Mark suit. Yes, good, yes. Oh, that brings us back to Tusk.
And before this can even register in Josh's mind, another villager slams him with one of the, I think they're called cudgels, which are those long kind of club looking stick things. And he slams right into Josh's skull. And then Josh collapses and is dragged off.
I read that might be Ingmar or Pele.
No fucking
But I don't
way.
know if that's true. So
I don't think Pele would do that. I don't know. I
Okay.
have high hopes for him.
I read that, but don't quote me if I'm wrong. But I did read that. So yeah, RIP to Josh's entire life. He gets dragged off. And then as he's getting dragged off, we also see Ruben just chilling in the corner. He's on his cot being like, yeah, word. Cool.
Well, and next morning at another communal meal, Allie,
How many? How many do we need?
Sten, who is another character here, he makes an announcement that the ruby radar has gone missing and that the temple will be unguarded as to allow for someone to return it, no questions asked. And Christian is like sure that it's Josh who took it, and he's so quick to throw him under the bus when questioned by Arnie.
He's like, we don't associate with him. We're not like with him.
It's like his actions don't reflect blah, blah, blah. It's so stupid. Well, and then Pele feels kind of responsible for bringing Josh and Mark, who is guilty by association. And he actually goes with Father Odd to try to go and like find them, quote unquote.
And I'm like, no, fuck you guys. Everyone knows. Everyone knows except for the visitors, the outsiders.
Yep. Literally everyone knows.
And I'm like, they all know that these are sacrifices that they have brought into this ceremony, village, commune, whatever you want to call it.
100%. And Dani actually then gets told that she's going to be doing another activity with the women while Christian has been summoned by Civ.
I'm like, is this sexist?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's very traditional, I feel like.
Oh, okay.
And Pele and Odd end up returning, and they announce that the truck is gone, so it's obvious that Josh and Mark must have taken it. And Pele kind of stares a little menacingly at Christian, which is interesting because you're like, what's going on there? What's like the full tension besides like he wants Dani?
He wants to fuck his girlfriend. I would say that's full tension right there.
Well, and then we move into one of like my favorite parts of like the film, and we're kind of getting close to the end here, and there's a lot that happens, so it comes at you fast. But
I call it a crescendo. We're getting into our crescendo.
Yes, 100%. Yes. And basically, a drink is made by the women, and it is made from flowers, and it is prepared. And essentially, these young women within Dani's age range are employed to drink it, including Dani and her new friend Karen.
They don't fucking tell you it's drugs or...
I was going to say, I immediately was like, is this mushroom tea again?
It's something.
Everything is mushroom tea.
Because I noted it as sweet-ass drugs and a breathing competition. And
like Karen, her friend, literally said, like, because Dani's like, wait, do it, because they're in like a line getting almost like a punch bowl serving of this tea, and Dani's like, what do I do? And Karen's like, look her in the eyes and take the tea, and this is tea for the competition, is what she says in quotes.
And then her and Karen look at each other and go,
oh yeah, they do.
I hate that.
And then the women, including Dani, start to assemble in circles around a large maple. And I'm so sorry, I didn't add this detail, but I should have added it in here. Dani is now full on in Midsommar garb. She is in a white dress with some floral embroidery. She's got a flower crown. I mean, honestly, she probably looks the best she's looked the entire movie.
She's adapting. She's not in her sweats anymore.
She's adapting and overcoming.
Yeah.
And Dani looks down as this like dance or whatever she signed up for is about to start. And she starts to see grass sprouting from her shoes. Kind of similar to when she was first on the mushroom tea in the beginning and she saw the grass sprouting from her hands, and she realized that she is tripping from the drink, and she kind of freaks out for like a minor second, I feel like.
But she like adapts really quickly to
the music. She like trusts, like she's like, you know what, whatever.
She's just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna dance to this song and just trust that people are gonna help me out here.
Yeah.
I'm so uncoordinated, and fun fact, Emma and the producer know like every single line dance, so...
Correction. The producer knows every single line dance, but he has taught me how to, I think it's called two-stepping, where you dance with a partner, and I just follow his lead.
Fair enough. I still can't do that at all.
We'll teach you.
Nope, I'm good.
And then after a speech from Irma, who I actually love, she has like great bangs and great color. Like she's got this beautiful white blonde hair and she's got fucking banging bangs.
Oh, because she looks like you because you're Swedish?
She looks like me in like 25 years. And Irma, and she like kind of announces like the start of this like dance competition, and some musicians start playing music, and the women just start to gather in these like circles of dancing, and they dance around this maypole.
And a maypole, for if you haven't seen this and you don't give a fuck, it's like just a pole, like a literal pole in the middle of a ground, and you're dancing in a circle around it.
Well, and it has greenery and florals.
It's
and
beautiful.
it's like symbolic, right?
But it's not like,
it's not anything special.
it's not a maypole tree. It's just a maypole.
A maypole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for perhaps the first time in this entire film, we actually see Dani enjoying herself, and she is dancing under the influence with her new friend Karen. And honestly, she looks like she's having a great time. I would do the same.
I'm happy for her. That sounds great. Meanwhile, fucking Christian is at Siv's house and having not the greatest time.
Well, and he like sits down waiting to talk to Siv, and he starts noticing like some murals on the wall, like in her weird quarters, which include a bear being burned alive.
And while he's watching this, I'm not sure he's not under the influence right now, right?
No, not yet.
Just later. Okay. But so then while he's observing these sketchy ass murals that are extremely foreshadowing, Siv, one of our woman leaders, joins him at this weird ass house, and he starts to defend himself about like he thinks he's there to be like, no, I didn't do this. It was Josh that took the Ruby Raider. And she's like, nah, bro, this is not why I brought you here. Maya has selected you, and we've approved that you can fuck her.
Yeah, you have been selected as Maya's mate.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck?
And then he goes, this is so classic. He literally goes, I think I ate one of her pubic hairs.
And then just like nothing else happens after that.
Literally, she's like, probably. Yeah. And then we're kind of going back and forth between Christian's experience and Dani's experience. And after literally outdancing all of the girls, Dani ends up winning this like dance competition somehow with the help of her friend Karen. And she is crowned the May Queen, and she's very surprised at what's going on. She didn't even know why she was really dancing in the first place. And she basically was like the last one standing, so she won.
Yes, go queen. But meanwhile, during this whole competition as well, Christian comes in to watch, and he's the only boy there, and it's so awkward. So while he's watching her, he's sitting there, and somebody offers him some more fucking spiked tea, and he's like, no, I don't want a bad trip. And the girl's like, yeah, no, you're it's fine.
I actually love her because she's like fucked up, and she's like, it's just this tea. And she honestly is super trusting. Like, I would have trusted her.
No, and I'm most likely to join a cult, so like I'd be like, hell yeah. Our little Dani is May Queen.
And you go, girl, for winning.
You go, girl.
You fucking go, girl.
Yes.
So as Dani has just won the May Queen, her picture is taken with like a group of the girls, and all of them look so happy and excited. Honestly, it looks like the most loving group of girls. If you just saw this scene and you had no clue what the context was of this entire movie, you'd be like, that is so sweet.
It's a group of girls.
You look great. A bunch of white blonde women just loving each other.
I'm also like, if you're not from the village, is it kosher to be crowned a May Queen?
Obviously, they're like stoked, though, that she's the queen.
No. Well, because they're girls, and we love that.
Because they're girls. And she's hugged and kissed by some of the other villagers. And as she's like making her way through the crowd, it almost reminds me of when the Grinch is...
Oh my God. When he's like doing the food competition?
No, when he's crowned. It's the holiday. What is it?
Holiday Who-meister? Holiday Cheermeister?
Yeah, the Holiday Cheermeister.
Oh my God.
He's like walking through the crowd, and this is like what she's doing as well. Is probably inspired by that film. And she sees some of the villagers, and people are giving her kisses, and people are like touching her on the shoulder and stuff. And she sees her mother, father, and her sister Terry, and they disappeared just as quickly as they appeared. And then
probably because of the whatever she was drugged with, you know?
And then Pele, hot Pele, comes in and congratulates her. I love Pele.
Okay.
He's the hottest guy, in my opinion.
Cool. I think Chidi's the hottest.
He's up there.
Okay.
But anyways, then he gives her, and this is what makes him hot, he gives her a big old smooch on the lips, and he's been waiting to give that to her. And that's when I was like, fuck yeah, boy. Get it.
Get it. Get it. Get it. Get it. Get it.
You called it at the beginning.
Yeah, he's wanted her lips up and down for the entire time.
I was like, what do you mean? Such an idiot. Anyways, then Dani walks up to a throne that they have just like ready to go for her. And it's basically the same spot that they've been having all of these communal meals that Allie loves, but they've like decorated it immensely. There's a lot of floral going on. And She's still kind of tripping from the flower drink that she had. And she starts to see these plants like swell and deflate around her, like they're breathing. And again, she's had this vision like a couple times now that she's been on this like mushroom drink, right?
But it's like been an evolution. It started with grass and then more grass. And now then it went to like leaves and now it's like flowers. So like she's like.
It's really sprouted.
She's sprouting.
Honestly, dude, like I'll have what she's having, if you know what I mean.
I won't because I would just die.
Yes, you would. Don't lie.
You know I would.
I know you would. Don't lie to me. And then this is so random, but she has brought a herring fish and told to eat it whole. It's obviously dead and cold and gross. And it's so funny because fish is such a huge dish in Sweden.
Like the Swedish ones?
Yeah. No. That's funny. I walked into that one. That's funny. That is funny. I love that. But fish is a huge, like that is their source of protein, at least on like the outskirts of Sweden, because there's like a lot of coastal areas. Like fish is huge, a huge, huge, huge meal in Sweden. But it's funny because they tell her to eat it whole and she tries and she literally can't and she kind of spits it out. And
she low-key doesn't try. They like put it,
you're
shove
right.
it down her mouth.
You're right. She doesn't.
I would have been like, fuck you.
And then it's kind of funny because you almost don't know if they're going to like be horrified that she like didn't complete this task. But then everyone starts bursting out into laughter and it's like so fun.
That's what my first reaction was too, is like, are they going to fuck with her because she doesn't complete this, or are they just like fucking with her?
Yeah. Well, and they all toast to Dani and it's like they basically tell her like, dude, you're family now. And family, again, hard theme throughout this entire film. Mm-hmm. She has been accepted essentially into another family.
Well, she's gaining that family that Pele has been alluding to that she's needing at this point.
Absolutely.
Also, like we start to see during the scene that Christian is having a trippy trip and he's like seeing things move on the table. Like there's like a boar's head or something, or a pig's head. We can see it evolving and like moving, and he's having a tripped out druggy breakdown.
And as he's like there sitting with everyone celebrating Dani, I mean, he sees Maya and she's heading towards the temple. And Dani also notices this.
She looking all hot too. She's like looking, she got those eyes.
100%. And Dani is told that she has to kind of do something where she needs to go and bless the crops and the livestock. And she's like, well, can I bring Christian? And they're like, no. Like, you can't bring Christian. It's just the May Queen that goes.
My only question is like, I love that Dani is acclimating so quickly, even though it's been like 3 hours that she's been crowned the May Queen. But like, would you, as a outside visitor that has never visited this country, be like, okay, I'm the May Queen now and I'll do all of this shit, these rituals that you ask of me?
I mean, I would do them, but with
haste.
With haste. Yeah. And I would have questions. I mean, just like her, like, can the producer come with me? And if they say no, I'd be like,
Oh, see, I would probably be like, okay, cool.
But honestly, she's probably like, fuck, I want to be the May Queen. So I'm going to do what they say. Who doesn't want to be the May Queen?
They should do a psychology class on this film.
They actually should. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and meanwhile, as this is happening too, like there's another villager girl and she kind of creates like a path of scattered flowers between Christian and Ruben's temple. And Dani is like carted off to do her like crop blessing. But then everyone looks at Christian as he finally starts to kind of like follow the path in his like drugged state. And one of the village men actually opens the temple doors and Christian enters to find Maya. And she is nude on a bed of twigs and flowers. And she's also surrounded by other nude women from like their 30s to their 60s who are all humming.
They're like,
it's crazy. It's literally crazy. And I forgot to mention, that was lovely, by the way. I forgot to mention too that actually before he even enters this like temple, he is derobed into a robe by
he's changed into like a ceremonial robe, yeah.
By someone who looks like Orville Peck. I love Orville Peck, so I can say that, but it's true. So anyways, he's enticed to come to Maya to have sexual relations with her.
It's almost a bewitched thing. He's being entranced.
Yeah, totally.
To come to this Ruben's barn thing to fuck this young woman who now can have sex that's 15
But yeah, it's very, very interesting. Well, and they kiss and they start to make love, and it's kind of, he doesn't just go
Make
into
love?
it. I'm sorry, that's what I wrote in my notes.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't think that was making love. I think everybody was confused except no, he was confused.
Well, I was going to say he had some hesitation
Yeah.
for sure.
Everybody else was like, yeah.
One of the other women places her cheek next to Maya's cheek as this is all happening and puts her cheek into Maya's hand, and they start singing even louder, and it kind of scares Christian a little bit.
But he still proceeds to like insert into her, and I was like, what the actual fuck? Side note, I did watch this with my mom, and that's Maya's mother that's doing that with her.
Wait, that's Maya's mother?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And my mom and I were both laughing at this, like,
Oh my God.
what
Yeah,
the actual
so
fuck?
weird. So weird. Well, and then as Maya's like moaning, the women start to moan in unison with her. And this is definitely a group activity. And also, forgot to mention that Ruben is just in the corner watching this all happen, doing his prophetic shit.
He always be watching.
He always be watching. And then going back to Dani's situation, she is in like a farm area now, and she is told that she is expected in Siv's house for a blessing. And in the distance, she hears moans coming from Ruben's temple.
Do you ever wonder, like, why she felt drawn to the moans?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Do you?
Well, like, why? Okay, so we hear moaning.
I feel like she knows. She has been seeing these sly things happening between Maya and Christian.
Yeah.
Literally since the minute he got there and she kicked him in the ass with that little conga line.
And she's like the one that's most concerned about all of her people that she came with. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, and then Dani wants to go and investigate, but then Hannah, one of the other girls, says that she shouldn't. And Dani insists. And so Dani marches her way up to the temple door, and she peeks through the keyhole, and she sees Christian thrusting onto Maya.
Oh my God.
And sees all the women around them. That must be, I can't even imagine.
Must you say thrusting?
I threw that one in there.
Oh man.
And Dani, stunned as hell, vomits and runs away. And she's then met by some of the other young women, and they're kind of directed by Hannah to take Dani to the main house. And this is where Dani finally breaks down into a cathartic cry, kind of similar to the one that we saw at the very beginning of the film. And this has been building this entire time, right? And Hannah is emphatically linked to Dani and also starts to release the same cry. And then the other women kind of follow suit. And it's almost like they're like all now like linked together.
Totally. And this is what Pele was talking about, is this is how you feel held. They're all holding each other and going, they're wailing on the floor.
They're like going through the same emotions together.
And I mean, that kind of,
like, I kind of root for her in a way.
I mean, this sounds kind of nice. Like, maybe they should do group therapy.
Like, you need a girl gang to, like, go
Just
through the feelings with you.
That's like my bachelorette party. Remember when I cried?
We all cried together as, like, Caroline did, like, a
sound bath
ceremony for us.
Shout
and
out
she
to Caroline.
literally played a harp on our freaking chests.
Yeah. It was amazing. But this seems like something cathartic, and also she needs this release of several things, meaning Christian, and
She's got a lot of buildup.
She got a lot of buildup, but she needs to release all of these things. And they're all holding each other. And that goes back to everything we've been saying about holding each other.
100%. As Christian ends up, like, exiting Ruben's house after he has just committed this horrible act of treason.
He was drugged. He was basically raped into...
That's true. You're right.
Fucking a girl. I don't know.
Well, he approaches the main house and he hears Dani's crying, and it kind of like gets to him a little bit. And so he like changes course like a little bit.
He like runs away. Fun fact is the actor who plays Christian runs out of the Ruben's... What do we call it? Ruben's temple?
Mm-hmm.
He runs out naked after he's deflowered this 15-year-old girl, Maya. And he suggested that he be naked because it would allude to more like of a...
Like a vulnerable feeling?
A vulnerable and like delusional and frightful situation. And so he's like, yeah, fuck it. I'll just like be fucking nude.
When he's like kind of running around, and he actually ends up seeing like a building that weirdly has this like truck that everyone's been mentioning that like Simon and Connie supposedly had escaped, and Mark and Josh too. And he runs kind of over to it, and there's a garden in the front of the building, and he notices a foot with a symbol painted on the sole sticking out of the ground. And it's so clearly Josh's foot. I think Christian's also kind of coming to in terms of like all of the drugs. And he turns and walks into a chicken coop. And this is where we get a very graphic scene.
This one fucks me up a bit.
Yeah. We see a naked body in this chicken coop that has been suspended in the air, positioning itself kind of like it's flying, sort of horizontal a little bit. And its ribs, it's a human body, and the ribs have been opened up and spread, and its lungs are out, and the ribs are spread like wings. And we come to find that this is Simon. And Christian notices in horror that the body is actually still breathing and that the eyes have actually been replaced with flowers, giving Jeepers Creepers, which I
That's what I thought
love,
too.
which I love because we love our little creeper guy.
We love our little creepers.
Yeah. And he tries to run. Christian tries to run, not the guy who is suspended, still breathing. Let me make that clear. And he slams into Father Odd, who blows a brown powder, he's immediately kind of into his face.
Yeah. And I'm like, he's like, okay, Father Odd, when did you
procure such powder?
Also, like, oh my God, how do you all have these?
How are they all where they need to be at the right time?
Yeah.
Well, and then Christian falls to the ground, paralyzed, and Father Odd closes Christian's eyes for him.
So, and that was a shocking scene. And then we get to another shocking sequence of scenes, and we wake up to Christian being slapped like awake, and he is a young woman who seems very lovely, and she's just like, hi, you're paralyzed, you can't move your body, and you can't speak, you can't feel anything, and you're in a wheelchair, and just deal with it.
I think it's the same gal who gave him the mushroom tea when he was watching like the maypole dance, and she was kind of drunk and cute, and she was like, hi, just like, take this. Like, I don't know.
Maybe that would be me. Maybe that'd be my role.
I feel like that would be
in this like village.
You'd be like, bitch, shake this.
Oh, you're right.
But in like the best way.
I'd be the one to go with the powder.
Your Father Odd. Well, and then as this is all happening, he's facing the stage, and we see Dani, and she's engulfed in this beautiful tower of flowers on this thorn, I was gonna say. But she seems distant. Like, she knows Christian's there, but I think because she had witnessed what she did and his betrayal, like his ultimate betrayal, she's like, I don't give two fucks about you.
I don't think she doesn't give two fucks. I think she is just so shocked by everything that's happened.
Yeah, it is. It's like shell shock.
And I think this lead up to Christian basically fucking her over, whether it's on her will or not, is really making her be like, yeah, it's a lot. It's making her be like, nah.
Well, the elders stand with Dani, and the rest, including Maya. Maya now has vivid red lipstick, by the way, basically saying like, I'm a hussy. Just kidding.
She's a woman.
She's like got the scarlet letter. And they're all behind Christian. And Siv, if you guys remember from earlier, she announces that it is the day of purification and that it requires 9 sacrifices. And this includes 4 villagers, 4 visitors, and then 1 chosen by the queen, which is so crazy because then you're like, oh my God, all of these people have been brought here purposefully to be sacrifices.
See?
And then Sten, one of the other villagers, he announces that the 4 villagers are the 2 elderly corpses that were kind of adorned as trees. And then we have 2 volunteers. And Dani actually ends up having to choose between Tubion and Christian for the final sacrifice.
And to be clear, Tubion is like a...
He got like picked at random.
Yeah, like a... What
like
is
Hunger Games?
Like Hunger Games or like bingo?
The bingo ball?
Or yeah, whatever.
The basket of balls.
Yeah.
That like...
that game.
The balls.
And this was an epic scene. So she's choosing between a sacrifice or her boyfriend, who has obviously fucked her over and fucked somebody else. And she doesn't even say anything. And she just looks at our paralyzed and not verbalized Christian.
Yeah. She kind of like selects him.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, and then you guys remember that, I think it's the yellow temple, right? Is that where the burning happens, right? So it's that yellow temple from the beginning, and they start wheeling in all of these sacrifices in there. And we actually see Connie's corpse gets wheeled into the temple. We see Mark's skin stuffed with straw. We see the elder corpses that are placed in there with some of their like prized possessions. We see Josh's corpse, and he has the ruby Rudar pages in his mouth that I don't know if you guys caught, but I was like, oh shit.
I saw that.
And then we also see Simon's body sitting down next to his. And then we see Christian, and he has been sewn up inside a gutted bear carcass and seated on a haystack.
Mind you, he's been sewn into this bear carcass alive. He just can't.
He's paralyzed.
He's paralyzed, yeah. And can't speak.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that I think Ingmar and someone else, I forget who Ulf, they are both just like volunteers, right? Like they have just volunteered themselves.
They thought it was like the noble thing to do. So they have all of their 9
sacrifices.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the entire Yellow Temple is set ablaze. And we see this epic scene of like every sacrifice starting to burn. And then we see Christian like in this bear carcass with absolute terror in his eyes, but there's nothing that he can do about it because he's paralyzed and he just has to burn alive.
This scene freaks me the fuck out because of Christian sewn into a bear. That's terrifying, obviously. But we have our 2 sacrifices that we start to see them actually.
They start to react.
They react like to the burning.
Yeah, Ulf is like actually screaming in terror as he starts to get burned alive. And it's so terrifying.
It's so terrifying. And outside of this burning
temple,
A-line building?
Yeah.
I was calling it an A-line building.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. But outside of this building where everything's being burned in, all of the villagers are outside mimicking screams, and they start to just scream and go kind of wild. And they're all just, again, going back to that theme of everybody holding each other. They're just holding each other. They feel like a family. They feel like home.
They're like mimicking the emotions, right?
Right.
So they're all screaming and like, holding each other, but some of them are falling to the ground, screaming cathartically. They are getting burned alive.
Right. But it feels like home.
It does.
Right. But it's influencing that kind of like trait that it's family here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they're all connected, basically.
And I think that Dani reacts to that vividly and starts obviously to react in the same way. She's viscerally like screaming and doing all these things. And it's kind of like a shit show at the end. But this is their end of their 9-day festival. And Dani is like kind of like, what the fuck? But then we have this epic ending shot.
Well, and Dani, as the temple burns, she actually like begins to smile. Mm-hmm. And I put in my notes that she is finally set free by her insanity and by the family that has now embraced her.
Yeah, it's literally, and you can kind of reflect if you look at the paintings and everything that we see. So when we see Dani's smile at the end of this, that it was going from very crazy frown to a subtle and then extreme smile. You can kind of see how that progresses in like the murals that we saw in all of these different things throughout the movie. So
it's all connected.
It's all connected. And then it's over.
That's done. That was Midsommar, you guys. Allie, what were some of your like hot takes? I know you have some.
So I have kind of a bunch of hot takes about this film. I watched this film for the first time, and I think 2022 by myself, and I'm not sure why I did that, to my mental well-being. And I've watched it about 8 to 10 times since then, and I learned something new every single time. There's so many little details, even like going from, like, we talked about this a little bit earlier, like the lightness and darkness and how that kind of alludes to what's going to be happening in the film is super cool. I also read that one critic said, whether you love or hate it, Midsommar is memorable. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Because you guys know I shit on movies, but
that's so true.
I did actually enjoy this movie more than others that we've reviewed. It also makes me want to avoid an IKEA, even though I love their Swedish meatballs.
And what else?
Their hot dogs.
They actually have great Swedish candy if you guys ever need to go. Anyways.
And I just thought this film is very heavy in familial relationships and like interpersonal relationships. So I thought that was cool to like see those parallels with this film and other of Ari Aster's films.
I kind of agree with you too. I was like, I loved that this was so different from a lot of horror films. Like this is entirely light. Every horror movie I swear that I have seen that is new in the last 5 to 7 years is so dark. Sometimes I can't even see what's happening on my television because it's so dark. And I'm like, shit, like I thought I had all the blinds closed, but like, damn, I cannot see what is happening. Where this film really, really leans into the lightness and just making you creeped out by the people of Harga and Hälsingland. Anyways, Allie, did you think that this film was scary?
I didn't. I thought it was just highly disturbing and potentially very real in some cultures that still exist or existed in the past. Like, remember the road to El Dorado? Like, they sacrificed shit like it was no one's business. Did. Yeah.
That's very true. Very true.
So no, but disturbing. You?
So I wouldn't say it was scary. I will say that there were a couple parts that did disturb me. Mainly just the like elders jumping off the cliff part, to be honest. I think if that was not in it, I would just be like, this was a cool film. Like I wouldn't have even classified it, I don't think, as horror. I would just be like, oh, Midsommar. Maybe it's a thriller. Maybe. I don't even know if you could classify it as a thriller. But you know what I mean. You're looking at me with confusion.
I'm looking up with you like what?
The scariest thing to me was when her sister was in the reflection of the outhouse when she was tripping on shrooms. And that happens within 20 minutes of the film. And then there's nothing else scary to me personally after that.
Fair enough.
But I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. And Allie, what was your favorite scene?
I love when Mark is tripping out on shrooms and he's like, I need everybody to lay down.
That's literally you.
It's me.
You do that when you just had a little too much White Claw. She's like, if everybody could lay down. Including my dogs when she's like over at mine in the producer's house.
Okay, well, I also love your dogs.
No, they lay down with you. That was the point I was going to make.
All the time.
They adhere to your instructions.
And like Mark is our comedic relief, so I'm like drawn to that. And this is why I would die very quickly. And Emma would be our May Queen.
Thank you, Allie, for that wonderful transition. Because my favorite scene is when we see Dani completely engulfed in her like hill of flowers, because I want to be in that. It seems scary, but at the same time so comforting. And I don't know. I just love that scene. And I also love when the other gal, one of the villagers, asks if anybody wants to watch Austin Powers, because yes, I do.
Same.
But anyways, so that was Midsommar, y'all. I know that was a little bit of a long one, but we had a lot of thoughts. And I think there was a lot coming off of our off week episode. We had a lot to say. I was excited to be back with the crew. I love you guys so much. And again, if you guys are trying to follow us on anything or just see what we're up to, we are on TikTok and Instagram at Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks. We also have a Patreon where you can find out what we're up to there as well. And if you guys would be so kind, if you love the podcast, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. We love to shout out people that give us reviews. And yeah, if you send us a screenshot, happy to send you guys some free stickers or tell a friend that you love us. Honestly, if you don't have time to leave a review, just tell somebody. Say, hey, Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks, Emma, Allie, the producer, we love them.
Support that. So, on that note, happy Midsommar. Don't disrespect pagan rituals and stay spooky fuckers.